Angela, what is your take?
It depends on which side you sit on. It's a non-controversy because it's helping her sell books.
All right, so you say it's a non-controversy. But, Scott, how about the idea of Omarosa, what she captured from John Kelly, the suggestions of what she says was a threat, what seemed to be her version of what the president knew versus how he came across in the phone call? What do you make of all that? What's the truth here?
Well, we need to hear from John Kelly, I guess, at some point, but it sounded to me like he had some pretty legitimate issues he needed to raise with her surrounding her treatment of her high office. I think we should expect more professionalism out of people given the title of assistant to the president, and she did not exhibit that behavior.
Fair point. However, how about the idea that the president says he was told she stunk every qualified way that you can think about it, and then he said, but keep her because she says good things about me. Is this about him, or is this about doing the job for the rest of us?
Who's that to, Chris?
That's to Scott. I know you're going to answer that. I'll give you his chance in a second.
Look,
but how do you feel about that?
Look, well, here's how I feel. When you get hired into any White House for any president at any level, your job is to serve the American people. Your job is not to serve yourself. And ultimately, I think all of these actions she has taken have culminated in her own pursuit of her own fortune and glory and have not been in the pursuit of serving the American people or the agenda that she was hired to promote. I think she's selling books. And look, she may be telling the truth about some things. She may release more recordings and other things may emerge. But at the end of the day, we have to expect better of these staffers. They have access to the president and to lots of information, and I don't think it looks good for us on the national or international stage to have people acting the way she's acting.
Couldn't that criticism be equally leveled at the president, Angela? That he finds out that she stinks in every way that someone can stink in a job, and he says, but try to keep her. She says good things about me.
What we know is that there's no end to the desires of this president in receiving flattery. We know that he likes it lavished upon him. What I think is really interesting, this is the only time you'll probably ever hear me defending Omarosa, and it certainly won't be her actions. But what's interesting is I haven't heard this same criticism by Republicans leveled at Steve Bannon, who pretty much did the same thing. Maybe he didn't record anyone, right? But this is certainly the same type of behavior, or Stephen Miller, or some of the other folks who are supposed to serve, right, the American people, but they are serving not only their own self-interest, but also the interests of this president, which very much conflict overall with what are in our best interest, our national security interests, as well as ensuring that we continue to be, I shouldn't even say continue to be, hope to become, this beacon of light and hope for all of the world. So I think that is what's really fascinating, that all of a sudden Omarosa is super demonized. I never liked her, not even on The Apprentice. They think this is The Apprentice, the remix, as I've said repeatedly. But nevertheless, she's not acting any differently than the rest of the people who've either been summarily dismissed or some of the folks who still sit in the White House.
She is a window, though, into an absence, which is that there's just not diversity in this White House, even by American political standards. Let's put up some numbers for the audience just to give context for this. We have graphics of how many cabinet members that you see. Donald Trump, number of white men in the first cabinet of each president. 18 for him, Barack Obama, 8. That gives you the full range. And that's from the New York Times. And then the number of women and minorities in the first cabinet of each president. Barack Obama, this time it flips. He had the most, Trump at 6. What does that tell you, Scott, about what the priority is in this White House?
Well, I think the priority for any White House should be to hire the best possible people to do the job, to serve the country, and to execute on the portfolios.
Hold on a second. You can't just whip through that line and not smile. You have to smile when you say that.
Well, look,
you can't talk about this White House hiring only the best and not smile. Be honest.
This is hogwash.
Here's how I would staff. Here's how I would staff a White House. I would try to find the best people I could find, and because no race and no gender has a monopoly on good ideas, if you're truly seeking out the best people to execute, you're going to wind up with some white folks, some black folks, some Asians, some men, some women, and that's the way it ought to be. I don't know that we ought to hold people to quotas based on the census, but we ought to hold people to the standard of, do I have the best possible people in here?
Do you think that they're doing well with that standard?
On behalf of my agenda.
How do you think they're doing with their own standard?
I think they have some great people working in the White House. I don't think Omarosa was a good choice.
34% turnover. 34%, Angela Rye. Nobody comes close to it. If you add them all up, they don't come close to this. The best of the best, Omarosa?
No, obviously, I don't agree with that either. I think what's interesting is, Scott, you brought up a good point about diversity in the White House. We were just talking about the cabinet positions. Chris, please tell me you have a graphic on the diversity in the White House. If Scott, I'll give you $5 good if you can name 5 black people in the White House. 5. $1 for each. You got 5?
Nope.
No,
Yeah.
I,
So
I don't,
anyway,
I don't have a list of the
yeah.
White House staff in front of me. I mean,
Yeah,
but
and
thank
even
you.
if you did, you would be
Sure there
you
are.
would give me my $5 back. I think the point remains, right, that you can have the best and the brightest, and the best and the brightest be black. You can have the best and the brightest, and the best and the brightest be Asian. You can have the best and the brightest, and the best and the brightest be women. So what's fascinating to me is that corporate America, where Donald Trump plans to, or is allegedly this big, rich billionaire boss that's figured it out. He's cracked the code. He still hasn't figured out that they've all said that diversity and inclusion is the path forward to ensuring that your bottom line is great. So speaking of making America great again, somehow it became synonymous with making America white again, starting in the cabinet.
Certainly on the numbers, that's a tough fact for the president to deal with. We're going to leave the debate there. I appreciate the arguments on both sides. Scott Jennings, Angela Rye,